Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Rich. Today I'm getting ready to pour the mud bed in the shower. So the first thing that I need to do to tackle installing the mortar bed is I need to set the appropriate height for the drain flange. Okay, so I'm down here by the drain pipe for the shower. The first thing that I needed to do was take a look at, obviously take a look at the instructions. And this is the Flow Effects drain flange that I purchased. I'm going with a bonding flange rather than the three-piece bolt-in type flange that you use with a liner pan because I'm going to be waterproofing to this over top of my mud bed rather than going underneath it. So with any flange or any drain, you need to have the appropriate pitch to that drain to make sure that the water runs down to it from the shower stall. And it's extremely important since I'm not using a curb. I have a curbless shower. So I want to make sure that I get the appropriate pitch. Now, it calls for the pitch ought to be 1/4 inch per foot. So for every foot away from the drain you need to go higher by 1/4 of an inch, or from the outermost area you need to drop 1/4 of an inch each foot. So I know that the distance from the corner of my shower is 31 and 3/4 to the center, but really to the drain flange it's going to be probably a little less than that, 27 or so. So I am going to essentially do a 3/4 of an inch because it's in the 30s to the center of this, rather than doing 24 inches, which would put me at a 1/2 inch drop. I'm going to do 3/4 of an inch drop. That should be plenty. Because it's not quite 36 inches to the corners, so I'm getting a little extra than 1/4 of an inch per foot fall, and I want to make sure that it is going down. You don't want to have it too steep because it's uncomfortable to stand on, but certainly because I'm not using a curb, I want to make sure that I have an appropriate amount of pitch to make sure that water is flowing to the drain and not getting out into the rest of the bathroom area. So I know that the outermost height of my mortar bed is going to be 2 inches thick, and so if I drop 3/4 of an inch down, that means this flange needs to be at 1 1/4 inch height. The Flow Effects flange, actually, the pipe itself, the 2-inch pipe itself goes in, and what makes it nice is it goes nearly to the top, but from this little mark right here where the pipe butts up against the flange itself, from here to the top, they say is 3/4 of an inch. So the nice part about that is that if you are wanting a 3/4 inch bed in the center here, you would just need to cut the pipe flush with the floor. But because I need to be 1 1/4 inch, I need to cut the pipe at a 1/2 inch higher than the floor. So I want to be a 1/2 inch above the floor. So let's go ahead and cut this piece and test it out. Okay, I'm back from cutting the pipe, so let's go ahead and kind of just dry fit this and make sure that everything is good before we do any kind of gluing, because we don't want to. You only get one shot at this, or you're going to be having to cut things and doing a whole bunch of stuff that you don't want to do. So let's put this on here, slide it down on there. And that's right at 1.25 inches. So that's really good. And what's nice about this flange is that it gives you some placement for some screws to kind of screw it down and get it level, so that you can make some fine adjustment to make sure that it's the appropriate place. The only thing that I'm thinking of is they want you to put thin set underneath here and fill all this in before you put the mortar bed. You can put the thin set from underneath, but it's probably going to be easier to, just to be able to do it from to when it's not set up. It'll be a whole lot easier just to kind of get mortar on here, because when it's got all these little nubs and grooves in here that you want to have thin set in here so that it will stick to the mortar bed and get a good solid connection between the two, so that when you step on it you don't have any movement, so that's nice and set into the mortar. So this is really nice as far as design elements. So I think that's pretty cool, and so are the screws to kind of adjust your level. So that's done. So I know that I got the appropriate amount of pitch and this is cut. So the next step is to go ahead and get the floor prepared for the mortar bed. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and put the some felt paper down. And this just serves as a kind of a moisture barrier between the mortar bed and the plywood, so that the mortar bed has enough moisture in it and it doesn't get soaked up by the plywood. And it serves as a kind of a membrane in between the two. So I cut a piece just a little bit longer than the floor so that it folds up a little bit. Since I'm having, this lipped floor because it's sunk down, I want to make sure that I kind of put a barrier between the walls and the mortar bed. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of lay it in place, and then I'm going to make a couple of cuts in these corners so that I can roll this up a little bit. Let's see how that feels. Just put it there. And that should be enough for it to be able to go up. Okay, now I'm just using a staple gun with the T50 model with some half-inch staples. That's more than plenty. I'd probably do 3/8, but it's fine. So I'm just going to go through and staple it down. length of lathe from the hardware store, and you want to make sure that you get like the stucco type of lathe that's galvanized. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it and just cutting it down with some tin snips. Okay, so I got all the lathe cut. It's all stapled down. It's all ready to go. So next step is to go ahead and mix up some mortar and start putting the mortar down. So we'll go ahead and do that. So I'm using the Mape 4-to-1 mud bed mix. So it's 4 parts sand, one part Portland cement. And they say, the instructions say to add 3 quarts of water to 1 bag. So I'll be measuring that out and then putting it in there. So since I'm doing 2 bags, it's going to be a total of 6 quarts of water. It says 3 to 4 quarts, so almost a gallon. But I'm going to start off with 3, and if I think that it needs a little bit more, I'll add a little more. But you just want to get the consistency of kind of like wet beach sand, to where you can kind of shape it and it'll hold its shape together without crumbling apart. That's 3 quarts. So, put that in there. Another 3 quarts. And then we just work it back and forth until we get the consistency that we want. Okay, so that's what you want, to be able to pack a ball where it doesn't clump apart. Alright, so we're back upstairs. I got the buckets of mortar up here. So first thing that you want to go ahead and do is pour a bucket kind of in the corners, and then start working your perimeter and making sure that your perimeter is level and the height that you want it to be, and then you can work off of that perimeter to the drain flange. I'm not going to put the drain flange on just this moment, just so that I don't end up kicking it or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do this back area, make sure it's nice and level, and get my perimeters out, and then I'll go ahead and start adding the flange to it. So let's just go ahead and start dumping it. So I want to be 2 inches all the way around, around the perimeter. So I want to be 2 inches high. Now, if you didn't have a mark, so I don't have a mark here, but I know my cement board is just about 2 inches high, almost exactly 2 inches high, because it's pretty much level with the plywood floor. So I'm using that as my guide, and I know it's pretty level. But if you didn't, you can, get a level and then make a mark with a pencil or Sharpie to kind of give yourself a line to work from, so that you know where that 2-inch mark is, or whatever height that you need to make it for your bed. But I know I'm working off of this Durarock board as a guide. So I'm ready to put the flange in place, and I've put a little bit of mortar around here, and I'm going to squish it into place once I get it. But I mixed up a little bit of thin set, because they want you to put thin set all to back butter this whole area so that it sticks to the mortar really well. So I mixed up some, what I'm using is Multi-Max, the Latacrete Multi-Max Light, but I just mixed up a tiny bit because I didn't want to waste a whole bunch. So we're going to go ahead and back butter this. So that it is nice and coated. And it has something to stick to. Okay, let's measure 17 3/4 and about 18. Needs to come just a tiny bit this way. That should be good. Now that we got it there, we can go ahead and pack it in there. Alright, so that's packed and it's level. So now we can start filling this in and start screeding to get to the drop that we need. The only thing that I need to do differently, normally you would just take a piece of wood or a level or something of that nature and go to your ends and then screed off of the edge of this flange, which makes it nice. Unfortunately, because I am going to be putting the Ditra mat, the Ditra heat mat in the shower, I need to lower the bed not flush with the flange. I got to lower it down by 1/4 of an inch so that when I put the mat on, the mat is flush with the flange. So it's a little bit more complex to do that, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. And I can use a sample of the heat mat, but I know that it's 1/4 of an inch thick, so I've got a strip of wood that's 1/4 of an inch thick, so I can go ahead and use that as a guide for the depth that it needs to be. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. But whatever it takes to get it to the right height. Gonna use a combination of wood screeds, the level, and my little makeshift wood trowel, and my finishing trowel to do what needs to be done. So let's go ahead and get to it. I'm using my little 1/4-inch stick to go around that to make sure that it's flush, and then I can just do my final troweling to that. So, took me a little longer than I wanted to, probably about 2 hours at this point from start to finish, but you know, I didn't know how much I was going to need. I bought 5 55-pound bags based on the instructions. I was thinking right around 15 square feet is what it was saying, with a 2-inch mortar bed. But that's 2 inches all the way around, and I'm not using 2 inches all the way around. I'm going down to 1 1/4 in the center. So didn't quite need the 4 bags, or actually I used about 3.5 bags to get it done. It's a good practice to go ahead and just get a little extra just to be safe, so that you're not having to run out to the store, especially if you're doing it on a Sunday when the store's closed. So just need to let this set up for about 24 hours before I can walk on it or do anything. I may allow a little extra time just to be sure, but that's, the mortar bed's complete. So that's how you go about doing it. Took me a little longer than I wanted, but it's done, and on to the next step. So hopefully this was helpful to you. If you like this video, please hit the like button or subscribe to my channels to see further updates on this bathroom remodel as I start putting in the Ditra heat in the floor, and then starting to waterproof. So stay tuned for videos on those items. Okay, we'll talk to you soon.